From the Wartime Diary of Clara Kramer, 22nd of November, 1942. The city is surrounded by Gestapo. It is 5 o'clock in the morning. We are still in bed. We can hear gunshots and Gestapo running and yelling. All of us crawled to our bunker beneath the floor. We sit in darkness. The candles that we prepared don't burn for lack of oxygen. Next time that Clara Kramer would see the sunlight and breathe fresh air was almost 2 years later, in July of 1944. 18th of April, 1943. Mrs. Beck knocked at the trapdoor and yelled that there was a fire on the street. The factory on one side and a house next to ours was on fire. The door started to burn. We started to panic. Some of us wanted to run. Others rather choked to death than be caught by the Germans. How can 17 people come out without being seen? We are sitting in the dark. Everybody envies the pharmacist and his wife because they have poison in a little pouch around their necks. In the meantime, Manya, my younger sister, ran upstairs. Seeing the fire raging, smoke all around, she said to Father, "Daddy, I want to live. I am going to run out." Maybe Daddy would have stopped her from going, but this day was the 40th anniversary of his mother's death. She died in a fire, and Manya was named after her. Manya was caught near the convent. Tilsit and Stietling caught her and took her to the Germans. Their reward for capturing a young Jewish girl and turning her over to the Nazis to be tortured and killed? 2 bottles of vodka. Imagine a time in history where you can measure the value of life in just 2 bottles of vodka. I was raised in Elizabeth, New Jersey, a community of Holocaust survivors. I knew that my mother and all of her friends experienced the horrors of the Holocaust, but none of them ever spoke of their pasts. Then an educator in our community, Dr. Joseph J. Prale, came to them and shared his idea to gather all of their stories on videotapes, live testimonies of history. He convinced them all that they possessed an important part of history and that they had an obligation to share it with future generations. It was after Rabbi Prale approached them that my mother decided for the first time to translate her diary. And it was only in 1994, when I was 40 years old, that I first began to read of my mother's story. Together, these survivors built the Holocaust Resource Center at Kean University, the first of its kind at an American university. They created a resource library and then offered courses to high school teachers throughout the state of New Jersey in the hope that these teachers would incorporate Holocaust and genocide studies into their curriculum. Over the past 30 years in New Jersey, thousands of teachers have taken the course, imparting their knowledge to over 1 million students. There were over 11 million victims of the Holocaust. 6 million Jewish lives were lost, but there were also Russians, Poles, Serbs, Gypsies, priests, homosexuals. There's a famous quote: "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." I would like to thank the Ukrainian Center for Holocaust Studies for their dedication to ensuring that we always remember the past and that we never repeat the sins and horrors of past generations. I especially want to give thanks to Anatol Podolsky and Vitaly Bobrov for their efforts that culminated in bringing my mother's story to the Ukrainian people, the land of her birth. And my sincerest hope is that through the efforts of people like Anatol and Vitaly, we shall never again come to a place in history when the measure of value of life is 2 bottles of vodka. I want to thank everybody involved in this event, and most of all, I want to thank all of you who came together and who participated. Thank you on behalf of Clara Kramer.